Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the current, the North Central Region Water Network's Speed Networking webinar series. The network is a university extension-led collaboration among land-grant universities in 12 Midwestern states working to build capacity for effective decision-making on water-related issues. I'm Rebecca Power. I'm Director of the North Central Region Water Network, and I will be your moderator for this webinar. The purpose of the current, this series, is to increase access to university extension programming and research that can strengthen water resource management across the Midwest. Our topic today is innovations in stormwater management. We're excited to feature the work of these presenters. They were some of the first recipients of the North Central Region Water Network seed funding, and we're going to hear some of the results of their work as well as work that was already ongoing when they received those funds. Our format today is three approximately 10-minute presentations with questions and discussion at the end. As a reminder, and you can see on the introductory slide there, all of our webinars are archived on the North Central Region Water Network website at northcentralwater.org, and there's a number of presentations there, all information still current on urban-related water resource issues as well as agricultural and rural community water resource issues. For this session, I want to strongly encourage everybody to participate in the discussion at the end. Many of us come to these webinars and we listen and learn quietly, but we want to hear from you on the potential for a new regional stormwater team, and our presenters will say more about that. In terms of how you participate, you can see the guidance there on the introductory slide. Just a couple things to point out. Number 2, where it talks about the audio setup wizard and looking for that icon. The microphone icon is at the top of close to the top of your screen on the right-hand side, just above, just in the audio where it says audio and video in brown letters on the right-hand side. During your presentation, please submit your questions via the chat box, and I will be collecting those and incorporating them into the discussion at the end to assist with that. As I said, there will be open discussion, so when you would like to say something using your microphone, if it would be easier that way rather than via the chat box, please raise your electronic hand. And the way that you do that is, again, on the right-hand side of your screen, there will be a series of icons around the middle of your screen. One's a smiley face, one is a person with a clock, one is a hand, and that's where you would click on that button to raise your hand to speak, and we'll open up your microphone privileges. That said, we're going to go ahead and begin with our speakers. Today's speakers are Shahram Missaghi from the University of Minnesota Extension, Eleanor Burkett from the University of Minnesota Extension, and Pekarek from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. And we'll give them more detailed introductions right before they speak. So we're going to start with Shahram. And Shahram develops research-based stormwater education programs that promote innovative practices to reduce the environmental impacts of excessive stormwater runoff. And there's a link to his website there. And he also conducts research in ecological modeling and climate change impacts on water resources. Thanks so much, Shahram, and go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you so much. I am really happy and excited to be here. As you mentioned, my name is Shahram Missaghi, and I work for University of Minnesota Extension. And my work focuses on developing educational programs for stormwater professionals, as you can also see on the bio, and also a bit of a research at St. Anthony Falls Laboratory. But today, really, the reason I'm here is because I'm so happy and excited to share with you some of the work we have done by the project that was funded by the North Central Region Water Network seed funding, and we want to share that product with you and also to kind of give you a little bit more information about it. But what we'll talk about today, just a list of topics, of course. We're going to start talking about innovation in stormwater management and maybe share an example with you. And then my colleague Eleanor will take you on a tour of our stormwater practices and maintenance core course. And of course, then we're going to talk about innovation extension programming, and that's Katie will be leading that conversation. And hopefully we'll end with the invitation to ask you to join our stormwater team. So we have a good full program ahead, and we'll start. When I always like to go back to fundamentals when we talk about a topic, and thank for Google, it's easy to do nowadays. So when we're talking about innovation, I asked the question, so well, what is innovation really? And of course, you go to Wikipedia, and innovation is defined as any new ideas or effective devices or new devices or processes. And that's really how innovation is defined. However, if you did a Google search on innovation, you can tell here I got about 97 million results. So you get lots of hits on the what is innovation. But what I found interesting is that, as we said, innovation does include new idea and processes. However, more often we really focus on devices or high technology or products, and we don't always consider the new idea processes as part of the innovation. So how does that relate to stormwater? Well, I think innovation in stormwater management is really to make sure that we do include both the processes and new ideas. And it's important because I guess given today's problems that we're facing today, it's really not business as usual, and I'm sure many of you are versed at these topics, and you realize that today we're facing an increased demand on our water resources. On the other hand, we have land use and land use changes and changes in landscape that we're facing. And of course, we have climate change that's totally shifting our frame of reference. And that's really what's making the urgency or is the driver of needing new ideas that we can address all these issues simultaneously. And, take a little quick look at this graph here. I know we're borrowing this from the MIT folks, and I love this graphics because, of course, we can recognize our beautiful Earth here. You can see all the blue area, which we have the surface water. What's interesting, if we were to take all that surface water and put it into a sphere, and relative to the size of the Earth, actually, we'll notice if you're looking at this, the larger, the blue dot, that is all of the surface water, all of the salt and first to put together. That how much water we have relative to the size of our planet. And if you look at that little smaller dot, that blue dot that's sort of north, maybe South Carolina or somewhere north of Florida, they see that little blue dot, that really constitutes all of our fresh water. So we have a finite amount of fresh water that we're dealing with, and that's the urgency that we need to take new looks and look at the whole thing with a new lens where we can consider management and processes that we can preserve that. And not only we have finite fresh water, but we have this finite fresh water, as we talked about, that are facing three grand challenges: the climate change, eutrophication, and increase in demand. And of course, got to talk about climate change. As I'll give you an example. In Minnesota, we have the recent significant climate trends in Minnesota has included, of course, we're going to face an increase in temperature. Particularly, we're going to have warmer winter with the higher minimum temperature in wintertime here in Minnesota, changes in dew points and moisture, which together are going to really lend themselves into having amplified precipitation signal. Basically means we're going to have less frequent rain, but when we get rain, they're going to be heck of a large event. So we get flood and drought sort of situations. So those are the impacts of climate and the other factors on our runoff. And again, you may ask, well, what does stormwater have to do with it? Well, I put this thing to this graphics here to kind of share with you. Well, really, if you think about it, we start with rain, and rain turns into stormwater runoff or inflow into a stream, and you can see in our inflow, at least the graphics here, you can see some of the debris or whatever else it is that the inflow or the runoff washes with itself into our lakes. So it's connect, and of course that influences the water quality of our lake or streams or other water resources. So that's really what the connection is. And I think where we can have innovation is this intersection of interface of rain into the inflow, where we have this yellow circle. I think it's here where we can look for opportunities that we can minimize the impact of excessive stormwater runoff. Of course, if you, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the hydrograph, this plot that we have here. If you look at the x-axis, well, this is the time, and of course on the y-axis, that's where we have the flow of the water. Now, one way I interpret this hydrograph is, I say, if I'm standing in a stream, and if I'm standing in a stream that is fed by a natural landscape, which is represented here in this plot with that green line, as it starts to rain, the stream level go up gently, and after rain drops, they drop off gently, versus if I'm standing in a stream that's fed by a landscape that's well developed, has high percentage of impervious area, which is represented here by constructed or the red line, you can see it immediately bounces up. The stream level goes up, and of course it drops immediately after the rain stops, and we end up with this glob of water that causes all the trouble. Now, of course, it's here where we implement best management practices or stormwater practices, where we try to bring that hydrograph back to the natural state. So it's really this part that we can get innovative and implement different products and different processes where we can minimize, again, the impact of stormwater runoff. So I think this is where the opportunities for us is to look for opportunities where we can minimize and impact and protect our water. So as an example of innovative stormwater management, I'm really excited to share with you about our Stormwater Core course, which is Stormwater Practice and Maintenance Core Curriculum, which is an online course. And the byline, of course, as you can read here, it says the purpose or the driving factor is empowering practitioners and educators, one, to learn stormwater basics, and second, to teach it to others as well. And I think this product is it's going to be able to do that. Of course, I am a little biased towards it, but a lot of folks have worked on it on the call here today as well, and I think what we have managed to put together is it's going to be 7 modules. Eleanor, of course, talked about a little bit more. I think all these modules are continuous, but yet independent learning modules they are at the same time. So you can review one module at a time or all in a row, and throughout the course, lots of effective multimedia tools are used, and I think all of it lends itself to engaging learners right away and keep them motivated and provide a good learning opportunity. And of course, there are lots of references used in the product or in the course as well. And best of all, if the learners, once they complete the course, then they also earn a certificate. So that is just a very, and by the way, this is a capture, the screen capture of the website where you can have access to the stormwater practices. But I am sure we want to listen to Eleanor and have where she can give us a tour of the product. I guess with that, Rebecca, I'll pass it along to you, and then Eleanor. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Shahram. I have to remember to turn my own mic button on. And for those of you just joining, please remember to submit any questions that you have into the chat box, and we will be asking for more interactive discussion after each of our next two presenters are finished. So now we're going to move on to Eleanor Burkett, also at the University of Minnesota, an extension educator there in water resources. She brings over 20 years of experience in education on horticulture and water issues. She is a co-lead on the Stormwater Practices and Maintenance Core Curriculum Online Regional Program. So thanks, Eleanor, and take it away.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yes, so I'm happy to share with you today a short tour of the Stormwater Practices Maintenance Core course. So we created bookmarks that look like these, and we have a URL, and you can copy this down now if you'd like as well. A short URL so people can go to access the information about the course. And we also have a little QR code here as well. These bookmarks are available. We can send them to you, or we could provide the copy of the bookmark to Rebecca, and she can post it on the website with the URL so that you will be able to go to it if you would like to access the course. So using that, if people want to access the course, it'll bring them to this page. This is the home page for the course, where a lot of information is about how to access the course. We have an introductory video about stormwater here, and as well as a list of instructions on how to enroll. And then accessing the course here on the e-extension website. So this is hosted on the e-extension network. So once people have enrolled and have linked to the e-extension website, they'll enter the course. Shown here is the course homepage. So to take a look at the course, let's start with the introduction. The course introduction consists of a video on how to navigate the course, so just instructions. Some of the people will be new to online learning as well as new to Moodle, so we wanted to give them instructions on how to navigate the course. A welcome video that's presented by Shahram Missaghi. We have in this section, we have the course overview, goals, and project information. And then we have that same introduction to stormwater video. So this course consists of 3 chapters, including Chapter 1 is Understanding the Impacts. It's listed over here, Understanding the Impacts of Stormwater Runoff upon Stormwater Runoff, excuse me. And Chapter 2 is Fundamentals of Stormwater Practices. And Chapter 3 is Stormwater Practices Maintenance. So each chapter consists of learner objectives for the chapter. So for example, here in Chapter 1, which is Understanding Impacts of Stormwater Runoff, our learners will be able to, upon completion of the course, will be able to explain how stormwater is generated, explain the relationship between stormwater and clean water, describe the regulatory drivers, and list the impacts of excessive stormwater. Also listed on this page are the various sections within the chapter. So let's take a look at the first section. So this example here in Chapter 1 in the first section, the learners may have a short amount of reading material to review. There could be graphics to help clarify a point. We also have in other chapters videos or links for detailed information and case studies to provide real-life situations. We also have activities for reinforcing learning. This is an example of one of the activities. In this activities, people can review the question and then drag and drop their answer. They also get immediate feedback on their answers to help them understand if they need to review the material some more or if they've gotten that material down well. Once they've finished, they can hit the submit button and go back to the course where they left off. So once a section is complete, such as the Stormwater Basics, a check mark will appear in the box on the right-hand side. This is useful for people if they need to leave the course and come back or get distracted. They'll easily be able to find out where they're at within the course. So moving on, taking a look at Chapter 2, the fundamentals of stormwater practices. Upon completion of this chapter, looking at the learner objectives, they'll be able to explain how to remove pollutants from stormwater, list several stormwater practices, and communicate the necessity of stormwater maintenance oops, that's the wrong section, sorry. They'll be able to explain how to, or excuse me, they'll be able to describe how each of the practices works. Again, you can see in the section headings listed here in the checkbox. So all the chapters are set up similarly. And then Chapter 3, which is the Stormwater Practices and Maintenance section, learners will be able to define and classify various stormwater practice and maintenance techniques, summarize the steps of stormwater management practices, and communicate the necessity of stormwater maintenance to stakeholders. And again, it follows the same course as before. One other thing I want to point out is that if people do get lost in the course, on the left-hand side, there is always the chapters as well as the subheadings listed so they can easily find their way, as well as using the tabs up at the top. So that covers the content of the Stormwater Practices and Maintenance core course. So again, this is an introductory course. I think Shahram mentioned that earlier. It's intended to give learners an understanding of stormwater, stormwater practices, and maintenance. Future modules will go into greater depth and focus of the practices design and maintenance. In this section, the course of the conclusion and next steps, the course links, the course objectives are restated here. So these are on the very first page in the introductory part as well as at the end. And then also learners may link, let's see here, learners may link to resources of stormwater information and or manuals for their states. Here's an example of that. I know this is really small writing, and I wanted to show here that we do have links for the 12 states that are within the North Central Region Water Network extension regions. Then the last part of this, in the conclusion and next steps, upon completion, students are asked to complete an evaluation survey. And this is links out into Qualtrics, and once they'll go through this short survey, they can continue and go to a form where they can complete their name and email address, and upon completion of that, they will be emailed a certificate of completion. So this ends the short tour of the Stormwater Practices and Maintenance course. I'll look forward to your questions after Katie has finished.
Excellent. Thank you, Eleanor. And so next, we're going to go to a Nebraska case study in innovation in extension programming. And Katie Pekarek is our presenter for this section. Katie's an associate extension educator working in water quality with the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and the School of Natural Resources, and a liaison with the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality. She earned her bachelor's degree from UNL in Biological Systems Engineering and graduate degrees from North Carolina State in Biological and Agricultural Engineering and Water Resource Management. She worked as a consulting engineer along the East Coast and in Nebraska prior to joining UNL. Thanks, Katie.
All right, thanks, Rebecca. So a little bit of what I want to talk to you about is how I got involved in the study, and then we'll delve into a Nebraska case study here. One of the things that's been kind of neat is that when I came on board, Shahram and Eleanor had already received seed funding to begin work on this course. And what was interesting is I could see a really significant overlap with programming that we had already put in place in Nebraska. And if you're anything like me, you can see where there might be some initial hesitancy. I have a little bit of a tendency to think, hey, I'm already doing this. But rather than pushing aside an opportunity for this great collaboration, I was lucky enough that these two have welcomed my skepticism in, and they've been able to put up with me. So one of my favorite things about this project that we've been working on as a group with this curriculum is that there's really been some willingness to embrace change and innovation. Sometimes we are the measure twice, cut once group, but sometimes when you're trying to be innovative, it can be important to be just the opposite, just start cutting. So what I want to talk to you now is very briefly tell you about some of the stormwater programming in Nebraska, how it relates to the curriculum, and then lead you into some of the things that I see us moving forward with. So a lot of you may know who this is. No, it's not Lassie's dad. This is Aldo Leopold. It's one of his early pictures. But in all of his philosophy in outdoor enthusiasm and education, one of the quotes he's had that I've clung to is up here on the board. And what I like about it is at the end he says, wildlife is comparatively easy, but human management is much more complex. Similarly, if you know who this is Gifford Panchow, the first chief of the U.S. Forest Service, and he had a profound effect on U.S. forest management and land management around the world. And one of the things towards his end of the career that he said about what he did was, to start with, I had to know something about the people, the country, and the trees. And of those, the first is the most important. What we are all working for in stormwater management is a diffuse problem. We are very good at working at the analytical side of things. I'm an engineer, I'm a numbers person, I really like that. We're good at managing our resources, but this human component, which is really what we're dealing with, is essential to getting a successful project on the ground or to getting a successful programming. So each solution is different, and the acceptance or non-acceptance of every solution is based on this human dimension. And this is where we really come in. So in Nebraska, what we have done in the past, before we got into this seed grant from the North Central Region Water Network, is we actually had received a USDA grant on improving and conserving water resources through stormwater management. Now, there's a couple unique things about that, in that our project that was funded is actually 50% extension. Sometimes it's unique to have extension brought on the front end of a project, let alone have it be funded as the majority component of extension. So within this program, one of the things we did is we focused on our Phase 2 municipalities. So unlike other states where they've got 55 and 60 and so on, Phase 2 municipalities, Nebraska only has 10. And for us, that's both a benefit and a little bit of a detriment, because there's a little bit less power. However, there are some other constraints that we've worked with, one of which is funding. There is no enabling legislation that allows a place for stormwater utilities in Nebraska. So what do? You either proceed with state funding that is given to you, or you find a way around it and put something else in place. So these municipalities have these constraints on them. And also our Phase 2 municipalities are highly located in these ag-centric locations. So like a lot of you, we have this little bit of an ag versus urban mentality. So when you get the farmers in a room, they say, what about the urban? And when you get the urban people in the room, they say, what about the farm? So it's not something that is stopping, but it is a bit of a constraint. You know, to handle some of these constraints, a team was formed, much like our Stormwater Core Curriculum team. And one of the main focuses of this team has been building relationships in these Phase 2 communities. So because we only have 10 of these communities, I'm able to tell you the names of each and every one of these people. I see them on a regular basis. I can make a phone call, and we can begin working on a program. Are these programs perfect that we're doing? Not quite, but when the stormwater coordinators of these communities need something, their first call is to Extension. So what have we done? This is a small selection of the programming that we've worked on. We've done everything from curriculum development to hands-on workshops to social assessments to sociology to evaluation, and even to a comic book with a coloring book component. So it's a very multimodal, highly variety of target audiences that are available. And so it takes a large number of people to accomplish this. We fall back on those relationships we formed a lot. Most of these demonstration projects we've done, we had some grant funding, but oftentimes a lot of the funding comes from the municipalities themselves. It comes from designers and installers that have contributed their time, their resources, their equipment is essential. Let's be honest, I am not very skilled on a backhoe, and I sure love a backhoe. So a lot of these things are based on these relationships we had. So I'm going to fly through this. One of the neat things we've done is green infrastructure tours. These have focused on the designers and the installers. And when we started, it was hard to fill a bus. We do something with a full 57-passenger bus. 5 years later, this was year 6 for us, and in the first one we did this year, with one email, no full advertising campaign, we filled 2 57-passenger buses. Made me a little nervous because that's a lot of people, but it tells you that there's a growing interest and a growing need for this information. One of the great things about these tours is that people have been very open. We've had designers, installers, and owners at each of the sites that we tour, and of those, they'll tell you what worked well, and we've gotten to the point that sometimes they like to share what didn't work even better. So these open communications and this networking that we foster between our stormwater professionals in the state has been extremely valuable. You can see here we hit a lot of different target audiences. We've really been looking to target the design and municipal staff, and we do pretty good at that. We get a fair amount of horticulture and landscape designers, but they're probably one of the hardest groups to target. So skipping through, looking at our results, one of the big things we need to do is work on evaluation. And we're not only looking at what will they do, we've gone back after 5 years and evaluated what have they done. So have they increased their understanding? Have they made practice changes? Do they do behavioral change? I'm going to skip through the rain garden portion in favor of moving forward to the end. However, we do kind of the same evaluation standpoint. We look at who's attending. We have both hands-on and in-class portions. We look at all the aspects of doing this, and we target a variety of different audiences. So installers and designers being one of the very important target audiences. As far as the results from this, we've had less of an acreage influence on folks that are participating in these workshops. This is highly subjective because when you're looking at this, the people that might be installing a rain garden won't have as large of a breadth of impact, but we are seeing that behavior change in there. So how do we measure impact? The way we've looked at it is looking at both professional and non-professional, looking at installers and designers. Just to give you an idea, we're looking at who gets the CEUs. We're looking at what kind of value they place on their education based on cost, based on content, and based on availability. We look at how many courses they have attended from many to, most common we're in that 2 to 5 range here. So that's a sign to us that we've been having consistent people coming back to get more information. We look at a variety of results on have they installed these different programs, and this evaluation takes place over the whole course of that selected programming. So I think I'm to my time here, and I'm going to just summarize. So how do we take what we are doing in our individual states, things that might be hands-on, things that might be state-specific, and move forward? Because I know the clay soils where I live are different than the lush hills, are different than a sandy soil, and we know that our precipitation of 12 inches a year in the panhandle of Nebraska does not compare to the 40 inches that other folks are getting. So how do we do that moving forward? These are just things that we've considered in Nebraska, things that we'd like to see moving forward. One of the things is tailoring some of this curriculum that we've just developed and tailoring it to Nebraska. So as we move forward, have Nebraska examples, but also, you know how it is with a little bit of hand-holding, actually demonstrate and take people on a walk through the tour, walk through the curriculum. Involving key partners has been extremely essential to success locally in Nebraska, and taking our information and sharing what we've done locally to regionally, to nationally, and then again taking it back through an iteration will be essential to how we move forward. So overall, what we're looking for is both short-term and long-term behavior change, resulting in that improved water conservation, that better water quality, and looking at this through, a very highly integrated multimodal approach to stormwater management education. So hopefully that gives you a quick idea of what we've done through a case study approach locally, how we look to move that regionally and nationally, and bring it back to that local focus again.
Great, thank you, Katie. And I think I'm going to advance one more slide here, and Shahram, maybe you want to talk about the invitation to join the Stormwater team, and we will couple that conversation with questions that people have for our presenters. And there are a couple of questions that have already been submitted there in the chat box. Please feel free to do that for other participants in the webinar. And as soon as Shahram gives his invitation, we will also open it up for people to raise their hands and ask a question with their microphone if you have a microphone that's able to do that. So Shahram, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Well, just a quick reminder of what our course or our curriculum, Stormwater core curriculum, and I'm going to read the byline again because I think it's a pretty cool byline. It's really that the purpose is empowering practitioners and educators to learn stormwater basics and teach others. So that's the purpose of our curriculum, at least in general. And we have been fortunate. We've had a very good team, as Katie talked about, that we've pulled together a good number of people. We had content experts. We've used editors. We've used the design web designers and the core curriculum designers. So we've had a very active team to bring the product to this point. And of course, as we said, as Eleanor mentioned and showed, we have finished just one module, which is the introductory, and we have a few more to go, and we're very optimistic that we'll get some funding to finish it. But for the whole process, we're also hoping that we'll continue with our team, and we would like to have a sustainable team. And so what we are asking, what we're asking is for extending an invitation to representatives from the 12 states of the North Central region to join this collaborative stormwater group. And of course, we'll start by focusing on the needs of the curriculum, of promotions and getting, maybe finding fundings and so forth. And however, there's a good opportunity also that this group can lead into other areas that we can adopt, maybe just in general water quality, and beyond anything else, just be a basic networking. Please, Katie and Eleanor and Rebecca, please, please help out here. And if I'm missing some big chunks, feel free to help out here. So we really hope, we already have a number of people from different states, but we are really interested to get folks from throughout the region. And when I talk about this team, I want just to very quickly just give you a picture of what we're talking about. We're talking attendance, of course, through online systems, and we're hoping that the team members will take it on their own to kind of go through this core curriculum that we have developed so far, the Stormwater core curriculum, become up to date, participate in promoting the courses. Now, as Eleanor mentioned, we already have bookmarks developed. We'll have posters printed, so all the promotional materials would be readily available to you if you like to have an oral or poster presentation at your local or regional water conference or related conferences. You can have a booth or presentations, and we'll provide all the materials as well. And I guess, but really the core purpose would be for you as a team member to be an advocate for this product. Hopefully you're totally sold out by these presentations today, and that you'll be an advocate for this, and as well as an advisor to the Stormwater core curriculum activities. Now, I know we have shared a lot of information, but I'm glad to hear the questions in the queue, so we're eager to talk about it too. I think Eleanor was going to guide us to tell us how we're going to take questions, or maybe Rebecca already did that. I'm sorry.
Okay, I guess he's turning it over to me. So I've started a new page, and I'm printing out, and as we go through, I'll list the questions that Shahram will be guiding us through. So for the different questions, we're going to have you be able to participate in different ways. For example, for the first question, if you would like to give a verbal response, please raise your hand over on the, there's the hand-raising icon above the names of the people who are attending, the participants. So please raise your hand if you'd like to give a verbal response. Or you can answer the question by using the chat box, and we will read those aloud. But before we do that, I was wondering if we wanted to answer the first two questions, Rebecca. I see here's one about the audience that I'd be happy to answer, and then there was one for Katie as well. Would you like us to go on with those first, Rebecca?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the audience because I think that will help our discussion. So this program, this course, is designed for stormwater professionals. So that could mean stormwater managers, public utility folks. It could be the staff that work with them, engineers. We have a university that's interested in using this course for their engineering students. It could also be contractors as well as others who either directly deal with stormwater and are working with stormwater or are connected to working with that. Maybe they're a designer, maybe they're a contractor. And this will give them basic information to help them better understand kind of the why of what they're doing. When I've been talking to people, they said they've learned all the practices or they learned different techniques, but they don't always understand or haven't been given the information to put that together with why they're doing it. And another neat thing about this course in the stormwater maintenance, the maintenance section, one of the things we've got there is so people will be able to learn about how to talk about it with stakeholders. So I think that's a real valuable piece as well, because like let's say they're working in a neighborhood and somebody comes along and asks a question, they'll be able to reply to it. So the other question is for Katie, it looks like, and it says, Katie, given that you felt like you were doing some of what this team was, I can't read the whole thing, was doing, how do you and your programs I can't read. Oh, there we go. How do you and your programs benefit from your participation? So, Katie, how have you benefited from participating in this?
All right. So, in our Phase 2 Nebraska towns, one of the things we talk about often is the funding that the Phase 2s receive to implement their stormwater programs. And as you know, education is one of those components that they have to fulfill. A lot of our Phase 2 municipalities are returning that money. You look at it, on average, the ones that return money return 40 to 60% of their state funding, which is a very minimal number to begin with. It's not enough to fund a coordinator position, and it's enough to do some small demonstrations or perhaps buy some small equipment, but there's not a lot that it gives them to get done. So they're returning some of that not much money. That said, one of the things that we've talked about is that a lot of our communities aren't sure how to spend that money. They're not sure. They're not necessarily sure of some of those basics that have been covered. So one of the things they want is some internal training. That's one of those needs that needs to be met and fulfilled. The other thing is, if you look at coordinators throughout our state, you have some that are sure the city engineer. We really only have one community that has a designated stormwater coordinator. And the rest, it's part of their duties. There's even one case where we have he's an injured fireman, and as part of his reassigned desk duties, he became the stormwater coordinator. So a lot of what we're looking for is not only how to help the Phase 2s implement their plan in an effective way, but it's also to help them train themselves and help them train their staff. And we've had a lot of talk here about translating what we've done in the curriculum to a certification program. So that certificate program would allow a contractor to bid for a certain project. You would have to go through this program before you could respond to an RFP or an RFQ. So there's a lot of different ways that this is being incorporated, and we're talking about doing it in the future. So one of the great benefits has been that I by myself, or I even in our local, as part of our stormwater team in Nebraska, resources are limited. It's hard to get something like this necessarily accomplished with all of your other given responsibilities. So this collaboration, this perspective from outside of the regions where I've worked has been extremely helpful within Nebraska.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Shahram, I'm hoping I'm not out of line here, but I was going to ask a question of you.
Sure.
You just described about forming or creating the stormwater team, or having expanding the stormwater team. Would you like people to email you, or is there a way, if people are interested in becoming involved, that they can do that?
Absolutely. I think any of us, anybody in the team, you, yourself, me, or Katie, or Rebecca, any of us will be more than happy to take your information and, of course, share more information about the team with you. So yes,
so
any of us. My name would be perfectly fine.
And I just put up here our 3 email addresses, so if people want to take those down, they are able to. Now, Shahram, I'll be quiet, and I'll turn it over to you for the questions that we have.
Okay, well, I hope everyone participates in this part. As you explained, you can either raise your hand to share with us, or through the computer, of course, and then or the chat. What we thought to go, I know we only have a few minutes left, but I thought one of the things, if you would take a moment and share with us, if you have an example of an innovative stormwater management from your locality, your community, and if you'd like just to share maybe just the name of it, and or if you'd like to talk about it. So why don't we take a moment and see if folks are sharing it. And Eleanor, I have to ask, and Katie, I have to ask for you guys' help. Somehow I cannot see what will be typed. So if you see the questions.
Oh, do you see a? Okay. I have a blank page up there now with just our email.
Yes, I see the blank. Yeah,
okay.
I see the blank page.
Okay.
And I see we have a good number of people here, so hopefully a few of us will share with, just a couple of examples of, if you have, I'm sure all of you have lots of local examples, but if you're willing to share with us. I guess in that line, what we're hoping for is, by communicating, you're sharing your stories and you've heard our stories, that we want to make sure if we're all having a good picture of what this Stormwater core curriculum is and what it can do and and what it hopes to accomplish. So maybe if you just want to let us know, if you either give us an example, or if you let us know if you have if you can tell us what Stormwater core curriculum is. Yes, go ahead, Eleanor.
Do we want to go on to question 2?
Well, I was hoping to lead to question 2. I mean, I sure hope to get some response to the first questions, but I don't know if we got. Maybe it's hard to come up with one on the fly, but I'm sure we all have lots of examples of the different activities, different programs we have locally on the with stormwater. Or we can talk about the stormwater core curriculum. Are there any questions? Does everyone have a good understanding of what the course is and what it intends to do? I know we talked about the audience.
David has an example of La Crosse, Wisconsin, street-side detention and infiltration.
Nice. Excellent. Again, the purpose is, or do I see another question there?
Yeah, that's the third. I just put up all 3 questions.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, so that's, again, ultimately our goal is to, of course, to have you join the team, or someone from your state that you can refer to us to, that you think would be a good contact, where she or he would be a right fit for our team. And but we just want to have a conversation if you have any questions about the team. Or we can talk about if it's going to snow in 2 hours or not, which is 60 degrees right now, so I don't know how that is about to happen.
This is Rebecca. I have a question.
Yes.
Tell me what you would say is innovative about this new stormwater curriculum, and also, Katie, what you see as innovative about the Nebraska example that you gave. And Dave, David, you could talk about what you saw as innovative about La Crosse, just type in a few words there. And then finally, I see that Daniel Devitt is asking about the requirements of being part of a team. So it's probably most important to answer that requirements question. And then I'm curious about, the theme of this was innovations in stormwater management, and what do you see as innovative about the curriculum that you've developed?
Sure, I'll start first, and I'll be very brief so I give a chance to others to contribute as well. As far as requirements, I think really the willingness to be the advocate for the stormwater core curriculum. So we've got a good picture of what the course is, what it can do, and be really a strong advocate for the course and advise future activities. Again, because if you're the expert in the area in your community, and we want to know how we can reach out to within your community to get the course to the right people. And beyond that, really, I think the requirement would be to have to be connected with the community. I'll stop there, and as far as what I think is innovative about Stormwater core curriculum, I think what's really the cool part is that I think it's one of the first that we know it's where we're bringing all the information together in a seamless and uniform way to present it to folks, where they can get the information themselves as well as download it or have access to it and use it as a teaching tool and teach others about the basic of stormwater. I'll quit there. Katie and Eleanor, please, what do you think?
From the Nebraska perspective, the key innovation that I really focus on, you know, I could have shown you our cool new bike lane that's separated by bioretention, or I could have shown you some of the many projects that have gone in since the time I began working on this. But I think that the real key innovation that we've had here in Nebraska is the relationship building and the focus on integrated partnerships. So you know, I'm an engineer, and I can tell you that I call the LAs all the time before I do anything with a plant. So I think that integrated method of developing projects, and the other innovation it's not necessarily new, but it falls in the people side of things, is that willingness to share failures. You know, I always say fashion is a couple years behind the coast. Well, stormwater in Nebraska is quite a ways behind the coast. So things that have worked on the East Coast are making their way to Nebraska and finding the way that they do and don't work, and having those innovative, unique applications for each iteration, and being able to share the failures has been a great benefit.
And one other short, this is Eleanor again, one other short kind of innovative thing I think about it is, you know, what might be spring in Nebraska may be a bit different than spring in Minnesota, or even spring in southern Minnesota to northern Minnesota. And the neat thing about this course, because it's online, is it's ready for people when they're ready to take it. And it's accessible to people 24/7, and it's easy to get through and follow as far as navigating the course. So I think that you know, we've worked really hard at that, and we want to continue to make improvements on that. So we're trying to make this course accessible for many people whenever they're ready to learn.
Okay, and we have a couple questions here. One from Debbie: what kind of credentials are you looking for to be more involved? And then one from Rick Aylertson: what does SWCC stand for?
Well, I can answer that, I guess. At least the SWCC is that I'm trying to get away from using that, but the Stormwater Core course, it's our nickname for the course. We didn't have the title for the course when we originally started using this, and I guess I've been trying to get away from using that, but it's still around. And I guess it's one of those things, once you start calling something a name, it sticks. The credentials for joining the course, I guess the main thing I would think would be involved in working in stormwater. This again is for professionals, so it's not a K-12 program. It's not directed towards homeowners. So it's people who are interested in developing a course directed towards stormwater professionals. Would Katie and Shahram agree with that? And that would be a basic credential?
Yes, that's true. I also want to emphasize that you don't necessarily need to be an engineer or a landscape architect. You know, one of the things that is key to a lot of these projects is the plant side of things, and maybe you're a horticulturalist. I think there's a lot of different areas that we need expertise in to effectively create a core curriculum that is able to disseminate throughout our entire region.
And we want to make this practical. So,
Yes.
not that, so you could bring a practicality into it even if you're not an engineer or, somebody with those kinds of credentials. So don't feel intimidated by that. I don't have an engineering degree or a PhD.
Great. Hey, thanks. Thanks to everybody. And right before we're finishing, just to see if we can get a show of hands, so to speak, or so there are buttons. Let me see if I can use my arrow. I don't know if I can. The buttons, they're the smiley, and on the left-hand side of your screen, the smiley face, the person with the clock, the hand, and then there's a check mark. So if you could just respond and say, check yes or check no, depending upon if you're interested in potentially participating in a regional stormwater team. Just check yes if you might be interested in doing that, just so we can get a sense from the folks that are still left on the line here whether you might be interested in participating. And then if you are and you check yes, you could put your email address in the chat box below, and that will help us get in touch with you.
And your last
So
name,
got
too, if you don't have it, because Debbie and Lynn didn't have their last name. Sorry, Rebecca. Okay, Deborah Palmer. I'm quick writing these down, but it doesn't hurt if somebody else does too in case I make a mistake.
Well, maybe I'll just take a second again to say thank you, Rebecca, and thanks to North Central Region Water Network and for the opportunity of being here today. It's just been great, so thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for joining this afternoon, and happy holidays, happy New Year in advance. Our next webinar will be after the first of the year, so we're going to take a holiday hiatus and be safe and be warm, and look forward to talking with you again in the new year.
All right.